This video is going to quickly explain how to do chi-square problems, and then we'll follow up hopefully with a couple of sample problems. Chi-square is a statistical tool we use to basically analyze how reliable our data is. If we did the experiment again, would we get the same data? Chi-square rhymes with I, it uses the Greek letter chi. The formula is sigma, sum of the observed minus expected squared divided by expected. How many observed? How many are actually there? Minus how many did we expect? In a perfect world, if we expected half of them to be red-eyed, how many exactly is it? So that is your formula for chi-square. And then once you get that chi-square value, you use this fabulous critical value chart to indicate if we accept or reject our null hypothesis. When we have such an experiment, typically you have a null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is just the typical expectation that any variation from the perfect expected values is simply due to chance. If the data was within the acceptable limits, we accept the null hypothesis. If the data is beyond acceptable limits, we reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis. Now, in order to decide if we accept or reject, we have to have one of these little tables, and we have to know our chi-square value, and we have to know how many degrees of freedom we have. And we use the table to find our p-value. Our p-value is basically how reliable is our data. If our p-value is over here, our p-value is 0.1 or greater, then we accept the data. That our data, it's not exactly what we expected, but it's within acceptable limits. If our p-value falls over here, or if our chi-square value falls over here, our p-value would be beyond acceptable limits, and we would reject the null hypothesis. Okay. Now, for this degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom is the number of possibilities minus 1. Meaning, if you had a choice between Chips Ahoy cookies, Oreo cookies, Thin Mints, or peanut butter patties, you have 4 choices. So how many degrees of freedom do you have? Well, 4 minus 1 is 1. If you had a choice between Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, you have 2 choices. Pick one. Okay. Your degrees of freedom are 1. 2 choices, Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, 2 choices, minus 1. All right, so we've got the formula, we've got kind of how this works, so the best way to do it is just jump in and do a sample problem. So here is our sample problem. In pea plants, yellow seeds are dominant over green seeds. An experiment was done to cross 2 plants